very good afternoon and Jule from Ladakh. As we greet in Ladakh, we say Jule. So, Jule to everyone. Yes, we can talk about other things in question-answer sessions, but I want to thank you all for inviting me here. It's a total pleasure for me, and I'll ask for some generosity from the timekeepers because I have also flown many, many hours and across the whole Himalayas. Yesterday morning I was at minus 15 degrees, 12,000 feet, and I came down here. And I especially thank you all for making me feel at home with this overly air-conditioned hall. I find it very funny. I was on the flight with somebody from Mumbai yesterday who had come to Ladakh for the frozen river trek and asking about any problems he faced. He said the hotel room was overheated. I was sweating. We seem to overdo what we can do. While it's smart to be able to do many things, it's wise not to do everything we can do. I was just wondering, with like 20,000 watts generated by the people alone, what amount of energy and machinery is going behind to take all the heat and make me feel cold even at this altitude. Anyway, this is a part of my concern about the way the world is going, so I thought I would begin with that. I have been an amateur of what you are professionals. I have had many hats to wear, and one of them is to design in a very lay person's way systems, both in mechanisms, engineering, and in social systems, in education, in how society functions. So I have much more come here to learn from you all. It has always been a fancy I've had how designers work, think, because I have had to do it myself, teaching myself, based on this faculty called common sense, which I really find of interest, but not very common. So before I begin, just a little view of what Ladakh is. It's top north of India, bordering Tibet and China on the east and Pakistan on the west, and Central Asian countries like Tajikistan on the north. Very cold, trans-Himalayan. It's not Himalayan, it's beyond the Himalayas, across, and therefore it's a dry desert in the sky because monsoon rains do not travel across the Himalayas. Therefore, we are a desert at 12 to 14,000 feet. Temperatures can go down to minus 20 to minus 30. This winter has been very mild with only minus 15. But despite the harshness of the climate, people have not only survived but thrived with a culture distinct to the place, its own music, dance, livelihoods of different kinds at this altitude with animals and farming and so on. If you flew to Ladakh, it would look almost barren and unlivable. That's why often people have called it moonland, which doesn't sound like a compliment because it only reflects, the barrenness of it. But if you look carefully, it is very different from the moon in that you will find oases of greens, all created by humans. This is one place where humans have added to the richness of nature. There's no deforestation because there is no forest. So any trees, anything green, any patch of green you see is all man-made. So amidst this scenario, this kind of scenery, there was a desert away from any habitations, that we came to 20 years ago to create an alternative school that will think and study and find solutions to peculiar problems that places like Ladakh face. You know, Ladakh is a minority, a cultural minority, linguistic minority of some 2,500,000 people, 2.5 lakh people in this vast country. Not only linguistic and cultural and so on, it's also a climatic minority and therefore a technological minority. Nothing that works here works for us, and nobody makes things that would work for us. So therefore, at this school, we try to find solutions to our own problems because nobody else would. We came to this desert that you just saw. By the way, that desert was where our school is. It's taken from across the Indus. Indus is what is between the camera and the picture here. And on the banks of Indus, on a south-facing slope, as if you can see. And this south-facing is critical for how this place functions, which I'll come to later. This campus is totally solar powered, except for backups. All cooking, heating, water pumping, space heating, everything happens with the sun. I'll come to that later. Autonomous in energy, autonomous in funding, self-sustaining. And this place, this was a desert with no humans, nothing, 20 years ago. We came there, camped in tents, and drew this design in a workshop of how to make this campus. So this poster or picture was created by students and us teachers at that time, 93 or 4. How this would be and how energy would flow with nature, with gravity, with sun, and nothing, as much as possible, nothing moving mechanisms. So it's, as I said, solar heated and powered, and this was completed by 1998, and it is buried or bermed in northern slopes, but the buildings facing south. Now, why they face south is behind how we keep warm and cool in that climate. This is a bit about how we have used design to live with nature and flow with nature. You will find in that little book more of my educational work. Half of me is about education reforms, half of me is about technological solutions to problems of a place like Ladakh. So what we have done is berm the buildings in the northern hill so that we protect ourselves from the northern cold winds, because in the north there is nothing but cold winds that come. But south is what matters. South is where the sun stays in the winter in the northern hemisphere. Unfortunately, many of us, and sadly many architects, don't think much of where the sun goes in summer, in winter, and design things, and then end up using air conditioners to cool and heaters to heat and so on. But these buildings are all bioclimatic or climate responsive. So the buildings all face south, and in winter they get a plastic greenhouse which rolls up in summer because it doesn't look so nice in summer, but in winter, warm is beautiful, we say. So because they are facing due south, and south is where the sun stays, all the sun's energy goes into the buildings. I'll explain more later. But in summer, if you have noticed, the sun stays overhead. It's never in the south for most of the northern hemisphere. So it rises in northeast, not east, and sets in northwest, not west, and stays overhead midday. Therefore, south is one direction where no sun enters in the summer and all the sun enters in winter. And so these buildings stay warmest in winter and coolest in summer because there's no sun. But Ladakh can be plus 30 in summer and plus 35 it can touch, and minus 35 it can touch in winter. So to be comfortable in both, you have to, and without use of machines and moving, mechanisms, you have to really learn about how nature works. So this is the building in summer when the plastic greenhouses are rolled up. And inside the building, it's designed so that it's all naturally lit, naturally heated, of course. No, lights are lit in the day, but at night we use photovoltaics, solar panels to light up the buildings. But for heating, it's no industrial products. It's just flowing with nature. I'll come to that. Now, to build, for energy we use the sun, but to build we use the earth. So it's a nice marriage of sun and earth to create comfortable spaces for people. And earth buildings in Ladakh has been a tradition for thousands of years. So you will find on every hill there are forts and palaces from 1,000 years ago that have been built in earth, rammed earth to be precise here. This is, I think, some 600 years old, but there are others that are 1,200 years old. So that was our inspiration, and 20 years ago we set ourselves to reverse this trend of going for concrete everywhere, even in Ladakh. Why concrete when earth is free, when earth you can use in such big bulk because it's free that it serves a thermal function also. So the earth walls are not just structural, but they are thermal. Because of their bulk, you can store all the heat of the day in them so that they are released at night, and that's how the rooms stay warm at night. I'll come to that. After building in earth facing south, you also have to insulate that building. South gives you the energy. Earth walls, fat earth walls absorb that energy during the day when you don't need so much and keeps it for the night when you really need it. But then you have to insulate the building. So here a worker is filling in the ceiling above the false ceiling, insulation, to keep the heat of the day till longest possible. And insulation is like you put on a jacket or a quilt. A building needs a quilt also in such climates. And even here for air conditioning, you need insulation, and that's what I was discussing with some air conditioning people, that one of our problems in the plains of India is that we spend more on AC machine size and not on insulating the house that is cooled. So the same principles apply here also. Anyway. For insulation, you could use very high-tech industrial materials, or here, as in this case, we use the sawdust and the wood shavings that is created on the site while the carpenters are working, and they are very good insulation. So sawdust and wood shavings go in all the rafter bays in the ceiling, and behind the walls also you can see double walls with sawdust in between, forming a jacket all around the building, and similarly under the floor. This is from an older version. Nowadays we do other things also. And then because of these south-facing buildings with fat walls to store and insulation around, you get, when it is minus 20, minus 25, evening temperatures are like plus 14. Minimum over a winter would touch plus 10. That would be at 4 in the morning or 5 when you are in bed, and doesn't matter. Yeah. So this is almost always warmer than in Delhi. Delhi goes to 5 or 6, and outside and inside are very similar. Here it's minus 20 outside and plus up to 20, maybe in the old buildings plus 14. So that's how they can be warm even in places like Ladakh. I always say, and honestly say, whenever I come down to Delhi, I feel cold. Not because of the AC, just un-air conditioned also. And what is good about these buildings is that they are the coolest in summer. because the design is such that it doesn't let sun in and therefore stays coolest in summer while being warmest in winter. Properly designed solar buildings will also be the coolest. Now, apart from thermometer, another indicator is the greens. Normally people think in Ladakh nothing green can grow in winters, but in these centrally solar heated buildings, flowers bloom in January when it is cold outside, like -25. And as I said, lighting is all natural. And ambience inside the classrooms and assembly rooms where students in January can function like in summer. So the idea of creating this campus was to make a place where not only students but professionals, teachers and village leaders could do trainings even in winter in warm conditions when they have not much work to do at home, because normally people do everything in summer and people have the whole year's livelihood to earn in summer, and they don't come for trainings and capacity building. So we created this so that winters would be equally functional. So this is inside. Now it is said that temperatures or the comfort level in a room is very important for schools, as it is for grown-ups also. There have been studies that show, as on this graph, that there is an optimal temperature where a child's brain functions best. And this was Scandinavian and American studies, so they found it was around 22 degrees where our mind performs the best, and it falls steeply before and after that optimal temperature. So our idea was to give our students that optimal comfort in the room. As it is, our students are challenged with textbooks and teachers and so on. Why not at least improve the buildings so that their minds, their brains can function? So it is very important for students to get that conducive environment. Otherwise, in Ladakh, we have schools where it's -2 or 3 inside the room, and then students are required to write exams when their fingers stop even folding. You can't write. So that's extreme. Even otherwise, the optimal performance of a student is related to the temperature also. So this is how it works. Very simple mechanism. There's this greenhouse that comes down in winter, as I said, and at this campus, students have different roles and responsibilities. One of them or two of them get the responsibility of opening the windows in the morning and closing them at night. So when you open the windows in the morning, the greenhouse generates hot air. The walls here are dark colored, so they absorb all the sun's visible light and turns it into, you could say, heat. And hot air rises, expands, therefore goes through the upper windows, strikes the walls, big fat earth walls, loses its heat, becomes heavy, comes down, goes into the greenhouse, heats again, goes up. A micro wind of some sort is generated. Same principle as the winds you feel here, but it's a micro wind within the building that works for us all day, carrying the heat of the sun in the greenhouse into the building, storing it in these big fat walls, masses, and then going back. And at night, by evening, the students close the windows and the heat is all trapped in the walls, and they release it to the room as the environment gets colder and colder and colder. And by morning, the sun rises and the cycle begins again. So that's why the rooms stay at +15 when it is -20 outside. This doesn't involve any fans and machines. I believe in, to me, high tech is beyond moving mechanisms. When things happen using natural cycles of nature. So that's how this building keeps warm. And at this campus, we use solar energy for most of our activities, as I said. All the cooking, except backup standby heating, is by solar energy. All the electricity is by solar energy. Water heating, very simple, student-designed water heaters that cost a 20th of commercial heaters. you can make, but normally we believe in buying and not making, but the students need to learn, so they make their own. It's a simple black surface with insulation, sawdust below, and a plastic greenhouse above that absorbs the heat. And to improve it, we float a bubble wrapper on the water, and that insulates the heat. And by 12 o'clock, you get 50-degree hot water. Yeah, so heating is one thing we use. Similarly, for growing vegetables, even when it is like snowed up all around, very cold, the greenhouses produce fresh green vegetables for our students and the kitchen. And for watering such gardens, again, solar. So solar for everything, because we have a lot of sun there. We have some 300 sunshine days in the year. So we don't have coal or oil in the earth, but we have a bright sun overhead. And we often fail to see that and keep cursing ourselves for not having oil in the earth. Even the cows live in solar cow sheds. Why only humans? So this is interesting, I think, from somewhat design point of view also. This is our cow shed. It's a vault. If you see, it's a vault. We were going to test earth vaults as a house option, building option, but before using it for humans, we thought nobody would trust a vault standing by itself, no cement, no concrete, no wood, just a roof of earth as a vault, an artificial cave, you could call it. So we built it for the cows. With the masons and workers, when we started, nobody would trust this, but after 10 years of cows enjoying the warmth of this house, now the masons say, yeah, I could live in this and I won't be afraid. So what it is that it is a vault like this, and it has a bin, big bin or barn. This is the barn on the north, where in autumn a truck will deliver all the hay for the cows on this north. And can you guess what it does? Yes, so the food becomes insulation. So the truck fills the barn, and that becomes the insulation from the north. Now 3 meters of hay is a huge insulation. And on the south is a black wall, dark wall, to absorb sun's rays, and a plastic roll that's tucked away, like in all buildings, and the one that I told you. This rolls down in winter, and the sun's rays are trapped by the wall, and convection currents bring it in. So inside here is the cow sitting, and there are holes into the hay store, so you don't have to run around with bags of hay. Gravity brings it in. You can pull it in from the store, from the food store. So the cows eat that throughout the winter, and by springtime, their food is finished and their insulation is not needed anymore. So that's how it is designed. Now we have added to the south a specially designed biodigester, as you see here on the south. Biogas plants work very well in India, and India is very good for them. But for Ladakh, this won't work. For Ladakh, we have such cold temperatures, and biogas starts at 9 degrees plus and above, and 25 is optimum. So we had to solar heat our biodigester also. So we put it along the length of the cow shed with reflectors. You see, this is a reflector, and this is a reflector like those of satellites panels that open up to reflect all the sun falling on them into the biomass, and at night they close, and they are very highly insulated, so they become the housing of the mass. So they insulate at night, and they collect sun's heat from reflection during the day. This is being tested still, and once it functions, it will be perhaps the only functioning biodigester at this altitude. And this is being proposed to the army to eliminate this huge threat. I don't know if you read in the newspapers, Ladakh has a huge dog menace, stray dog menace, mainly happening because of army camps which throw all their food waste, and dogs breed, and then 2 months ago a woman was eaten alive by dogs. So we are proposing this to the army so that instead of breeding dogs, they can have cows around. Entrepreneurs can put dairy farms using their kitchen waste for the cows. This, at our campus, the cows are fed almost entirely by kitchen waste from the kitchen. If we didn't have this cow shed, we would be breeding dogs. But we are producing milk. So the army camps, very good journalist, and then his villagers, he's from a very remote place, Khardong, which is the highest motorable road and so on, that village. His villagers wanted him to represent them in the Ladakhi parliament or assembly, so he went into politics and became the education minister for Ladakh. Yeah? And another one who had failed only 3 times in 10th grade. He was not gifted with academics like this one discovered at the campus, but we saw that he had very good eyes for graphics, for images, and we steered him towards filmmaking and photography. And today, as I speak, he's winning international film festivals in France, in Canada, in documentary filmmaking. So they are not failures. They are anything but failures. There are IAS people who have become headmasters, people who have become the only woman travel company entrepreneur, all women's travel company, and so on. There are many. In fact, the director or the campus head until last year was a former student who came back to head the campus, and he had not only failed, he had additional titles of being kicked out of 2 or 3 schools. They could not stand him, and they kicked out of one, and he went to another. They kicked out, and finally he came here and did wonderfully, and later became the head of the campus. Okay. So there are many, many stories. I'll stop at that. So how they learn is that they learn by living at the campus. It's student-driven campus. They decide. They form they run the campus as a tiny country. They form a little government of 2 months. Every 2 months, the government changes and sets targets, executes it, and then reports to the Students' Council or Parliament of what they did and did not. And that's how they learn life skills, by living. These would be otherwise read in a textbook and you don't learn, but by learning to set goals, execute them, report, be answerable, be accountable, they learn the life skills. And this change of government is a big event at the campus every 2 months. We learned, this is also something to do with maybe design of the social kind. We saw in the beginning, maybe some 10 years ago when we started putting in this system, that students wouldn't take it very seriously, the responsibilities, the portfolios they got. Then we learned from some other institutions in society. For example, I think marriage and God are 2 of the biggest inventions that stopped a lot of violence in the world, I feel. Huh? God, of course, with all the fear and with all the, temptations of heaven and fear of hell and all that, was a beautiful invention. Similarly, marriage. You make such a big deal of the wedding day that you can't break it. That's the key design element in marriages. If they were not a big deal, every day they'll be, breaking and then breaking heads. And so we put this design element, we made this election and changeover of government a big deal. We invite all the former students to this event and very important guests, and we saw that students were very serious throughout the 2 months. They would hand over, adding this importance that solemnizes the process. Yeah, that's why we say solemnize the marriage, like that. So anyway, that's how the place is run, the students run with a small government, and this, I'll come to that later, but this campus has its own newspaper called Campus Times, it has its own radio called Campus Radio, and even Campus Time. Our time is 1 hour ahead of Indian Standard Time. Not just to be different, but this is a very easy way of making young people go to bed early and get up early. When it is 10, their watches say 11, so they feel sleepy. When it is 6 by their watches, it's actually 5, and they get up at 5, yet thinking it's 6. So that's another design. Students grow their own food. They care for the cows and the solar energy devices and greenhouses that produce electricity, the kitchen, the powerhouse that produces 3 or 4 kilowatts of power. They are at the helm of affairs. And they grow their own food, very healthy and clean. And because we produce most of our food and most of our energy, it's very easy to be self-reliant. A third of our income comes from eliminating the costs, and a third comes from generating income. We have lots of exchanges with schools in different parts of the world, from UK, USA, Korea, Japan. They come here and spend weeks to months, and we charge them very well. And then a third the students pay. A third has to come from earning, a third has to come from the students. If they can't, we support them, waive the fee, but they should also value, so at least a third they pay. Like this, 3/3 make it totally autonomous. We don't take any grants, from government or otherwise. Pick up independent projects like this solar rickshaw making, and yeah, we have all solar buildings, even the cows are in solar cow sheds, but what about our nomadic population that live in very harsh cold conditions? So the students made a tent design, a solar heated nomadic tent. So likewise they do all such projects. And then we had one problem. Because all buildings are solar, it aroused interest among many people, including the Indian Army. They'd come and ask, how do you build? So we can't tell them how to build solar buildings in 1 hour, or they'll make a mess. So this was becoming a problem, but we could happily turn it into an opportunity. So a few years ago, we trained 4 of our students from this school to become solar builders. So now you can call them and they'll come and design and build for you a solar heated, no energy, zero energy building. And we use world-class earth building technologies, mind you. We don't need to go for cement. So these are like earth buildings using rammed earth of the modern kind. So these are frames where you ram the earth inside the frame and then open the frame and there's a wall that's born. You can ram it manually or you can ram it with pneumatic machines, depending on what makes commercial sense also. So these are the new buildings that this company called Third Pole Constructions does for cold climate. And it has, as you see, insulation between the walls. It can be industrial material, or we have now started using, as you see here, cashmere hair, pashmina goat hair, that is rejected by the pashmina industry, but it's never hair. They have to remove the fluffy wool and throw the hair, but since machines are never 100% efficient, fluffy wool goes with the hair, and their loss is our gain. So we buy it very cheap, and so these buildings are insulated with that. And these walls are just as they came out of the mold. No plasters, no paint, nothing. So similarly, we are coming with straw clay, what we call the straw that Punjab burns by millions of kilos or tons, causing lots of black carbon that melts the glaciers. We are trying to put them by mixing them with very cohesive clay that we find in our area, and they become so strong that here it is spanning a rafter. So there's nothing, no load-bearing thing except for the clay and straw. Do you see here? The whole floor is just straw and clay, and it can take the load, and it can insulate sound and cold. And this is an earth floor made that way. A building made by this company, the first one. And this is like high-end by even global standards. It says high insulation everywhere, industrial double glazing with black walls that absorb the heat, and interfloor circulation. And now we are sharing our experience with the global community through doing workshops and courses in summer. So this was with Masdar Institute and MIT for engineers and non-engineers also about energy. Similarly, every summer we do earth architecture courses for internationally for 2 weeks only. And one of the recent inventions or innovations has been to solve the problem of melting glaciers and climate change. And many Ladakhi villages are like having to almost move from their villages. Not yet many, but few have already had to migrate, making them the first climate refugees maybe, because the streams are drying up as glaciers are melting away. So last year we did a student project together with me to make artificial glaciers. I'll just share with you a little bit, because there's a film, a 6-minute film that you can watch on this Indiegogo.com. For this project, we did a prototype last year at our school. So what you're seeing is that prototype. Yeah? It's a 2-story ice mountain. Just to prove the point, the idea is to take water from a higher source, because Ladakh being hilly means every village is sloping down towards the Indus River, towards the river. And glacial streams go down from the glaciers to the Indus, or the river, which is at the lowest altitude. River, by definition, takes the lowest course, easiest course. And in between are the villages which are short of water. So we thought, why not put a pipe at a little upstream, and a pipe will bring the water down. But since water maintains its level, if you raise the pipe, the water will go up. It could be 10 stories or 30 stories that you bring it from upstream, and it goes 10 to 20 stories high, and as the water falls, it freezes in minus 30, minus 20 degrees and forms ice. Now that ice does not melt till summer because of this cone shape, which exposes minimum surface area to the sun and holds a huge volume. These ice mountains do not melt until May and June. That was the principle, but to prove that it works, we did this prototype. This is in February, but 1st of May it was still 1 story high. So the idea is that in winter, when there is no need of water, no farming happening, so the water goes into the Indus, wasted. So store that water in the form of these mountains, and then it melts only in April and May, when there's like everybody is dying for every drop of water, because everybody wants to farm and they don't have. Now that time this ice melts and gives them water. So that's the idea. This is the Ice Stupa artificial glacier. Stupa because it has that shape. And Ladakh, most people are Buddhists, in Leh district at least, so they have great reverence for stupas. And stupas also because, here's again some cheating you will see. People put prayer flags on stupas in Ladakh. So on our Ice Stupa also we made them put prayer flags because they look like stupas. And the prayer flags, if you put, the gods will be happy and your ice will last longer into the summer. And I'm not lying, because they provide partial shading and they provide windbreak from the... So early March, we have a most religious, pious, sacred day. And that's when ice starts melting. So people would come and put their prayer flags partially shading it, partially stop breaking the wind speed of convection, of wind, spring warm winds, and therefore the ice would last longer. So that was the prototype that established the idea. Now, right as I speak, I have run away from this project, and I was not sure I could come to this because we are doing this pilot scale for a village, this Ice Stupa. Now, this is real scale that we are doing this year. It comes from the glacier. This is like 20 kilometers, a satellite picture. From the glaciers, the stream comes, and here somewhere we divert the stream. Can you see in this picture? Yeah, a red line. That's a 2 kilometer long pipeline, 2.3 kilometer long pipeline that goes away from the stream and across to a place which is like 60 meters lower than the upstream. Therefore, theoretically, up to 60 meters the water should rise, but with losses it would be some 40, 30 meters. So this is a projection animation, or what do you call, modeling of what it will be like. Ice stupas of 10 to 12 stories high, and many of them, 70 or 80 of them, freezing all the wasting water of the streams into big mountains, and then irrigating this whole desert during the spring with that. The work has already started. We were a little behind schedule, so here I'll show you just a few pictures and then I'm done. The Ice Stupa, which is like 100 feet tall and 100 feet wide, has a igloo or a dome at the center, is to have, so that you can control how the water goes and the pipes can be added. And it has a tunnel to access the center. Now, it has been put in place so that ice starts forming all around it, and it will be a 10-story thing, 100 feet wide, but this whole thing will be submerged, as starts happening here when we are setting up, and the next morning the ice has already formed, covering the dome. So similarly, it will go on to 10 stories is our expectation. We are working on this pilot right now. Side by side, we are also working on studying or practical research on growing things using that precious water that you store from winter. So this is also important. You can't waste water that has been earned in such a hard way. So these are tunnel greenhouses which produce without the farmer having to go inside these tiny tunnels, and no work. This we call lazy farmer's greenhouse. Yeah? So in this tunnel, you sow the seeds and then cover it, and 1 month later, you just go and collect your harvest. There are drip irrigation little pipes. There are black plastic lining that stops weeding, so you don't have to weed. You don't have to water except half an hour in 10 days, and that's how you grow. This last winter, we experimented with this at our campus with our students. We produced enough for all the students and for some symbolic sale in the market, so that, it proves that we can have even surplus. So it was much more productive in the winter in greenhouses than in the summer without, and with a tenth of the water that it would use. So, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Hemant Suthar. I run a graphic design studio. I want to ask you, how many times did you fail, and what made you take up this?
Well, it's a very different story. I was lucky not to go to schools till I was 8.5, and therefore not fail till that time, at least. So I come from a village of like 4 houses. There was no school. So I stayed at my home, climbing trees and jumping in rivers, and learned. I was always at the verge of failing. Did not fail, but I often considered suicide as a solution to what I was facing in the classrooms. And that's what moves me towards reforming this education system, because if that's what I went through, there must be so many children. And there must be so many teachers who could do so much better, because I got teachers who rescued me and who changed me completely, if I'm changed.
Although I always resist asking questions at such forums, I'm a reporter. My name is Saqib Malik. I'm with Sakal Times. But really great to have you here, Sonamji, from my dear state of Jammu and Kashmir. I'm from Kashmir as well. A quick question. The abrogation of Article 370 on the basis of which the Lok Sabha elections were fought, so is essentially to abrogate Article 370. Would you really suggest that?
I don't want to get into Article
Okay.
370.
Sir,
It's
but
more
would,
about
would you
design.
suggest that there should be, there should be a window open to investments from outside J&K in such innovative projects, so that you get a boost to your work. There's somebody to join hands with. You have multinationals coming in.
Yes, for investment of development, yes, but I don't know if Article 370 stops people from investing. But otherwise, definitely yes, this place needs to have at least what it can do according to its own needs. Yes, but I don't know if the article is an impediment. Yeah.
Anusha has a question here. I'll come to you. Any other hands? Yes, so I'll come. Finally, some hands in the back. We'll come to you next.
Talking of investment,
Anusha, can I ask you to stand up when you ask your question so the camera can catch you?
This Ice Stupa glacier is being made is funded by crowdfunding. We talked a lot about crowdfunding. It was on Indiegogo, and it was a challenge to launch a crowdfunding campaign from Ladakh, with all the remoteness and digital disconnectivity, but we managed to pull it through and we got some 110% or something.
How much does it cost to fund one Ice Stupa?
There's no such one thing. What we are doing is $120,000, some 72 lakh rupees or so, but that's for, I think, 70 Ice Stupas every year for maybe 50 years. So it's the cheapest way of storing water. You can't imagine anything cheaper.
I'm asking because I'm sure there'll be people who would like to fund one and have their name put on an Ice Stupa. So if individuals would like to fund one each, that could be.
And you know how impermanent ice is.
Exactly why one should put. Yeah.
Beautiful way of remembering
Anusha.
impermanence.
Hi, I'm Anusha Yadav, and my question is there any room for technology like 3D printing?
3D?
3D printing?
Yes, I've often played with the idea before the concept of 3D building came. But yes, with Earth, it is possible. It is possible you can have a system that goes on auto building. That's, but again, without using too complicated technology. My idea would be to do that without much fuss. Yeah.
Okay, right in the back of the hall. I'm going to go back to the end of the hall. Can you stand up? Those who want to ask questions in the back of the hall. I can't see you. There you are. Same rules. Tell us who you are. Ask your question. Right at the back. Right at the back. Right at the back. We'll come to you next. I'm not discriminating.
I'm Pragya Chajer from MIT Institute of Design. My question was the number of stupas, ice stupas that you're creating, would it affect the water levels which go downwards, because farming continues to happen in winters there as well?
Excellent question. You get a free pass to next year's PDF. Please note down her name and contact Bala or Ashwini. You get a free pass.
You asked whether the water level would go down.
In the main river.
Yeah. Okay. What it is that in the winter, there are still glaciers melting, and there's always water in the Indus. And mind you, Indus, this is very difficult for most people to understand. River Indus is useful to hardly anybody, because we fail to understand that rivers flow at the lowest level. Anybody who's doing anything has to be therefore higher, and you can't get water higher. So Indus, going into Indus means wasting. It is the tributaries, the streams, that feed people, that feed any green things, any wildlife, anything that grows. It's the tributaries. And the ice stupas actually recharge all these springs and tributaries, because it retains it from going into a pit where it can never come back. So that way it will add to the greenery and biodiversity. Yes, if there were hundreds and hundreds of ice stupas, this Indus river will become slightly smaller, but it should not harm anybody because it's at the lowest level where nothing grows. Indus is not used for growing anything in the mountains. Yes, much later in the plains, Indus Valley civilization, etc. happens. But when it comes from the mountains, it's hardly useful to anybody. Nothing grows because of Indus, except in 1 or 2 villages with lots of hardships. They can do something with Indus, where the whole thing is very flat plain. But every other village, the story is more about streams that come from the glaciers and that feed the Indus. And that will be helped by this, not harmed.
Okay, I'm just going to go to the gentlemen there who have been kept waiting. I'll come to you next. And I've noticed. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Aditya Tambe from MIT ID as well. My question is that, we're discussing here the connection between technology and design and the future. And in the morning we heard that, technology is very essential and how we should use it and take it forward. But here we're talking about an approach which kind of goes away from the technology. So what is the future of design? Is it this approach or the one that requires technology?
Ramming earth is also a kind of technology.
This is
solar heating is also a kind of technology.
Technology is not about unnecessarily moving machines.
I'm going to quote what Sonam started his presentation with. He said technology is being smart enough to do all sorts of things and being wise enough not to do all those things. So maybe that's the role of technology. Right. Satish had a question here and I saw a hand up there.
So are you also storing fish in your stupas?
Right. You get a minus pass for next year's PDF. We're going to ban you. Yeah. Just wait for a mic.
Hi, my name is Kunal. I'm a graphic designer practicing in Surat. I have a couple of questions. First is, are the other villages following the same technique that you have adopted, like following your lines and making the house facing south and all those other technologies? And the other question is, would you be interested in designing such houses for other kind of extreme situations? Like, for example, maybe in Rajasthan where there is a lot of heat and a lot of winter and cold in winter. So would you be interested in designing houses for them and help them adapt to the situation as well?
First question. What was the first question? Sorry. I forgot.
Are there other villages following the same thing?
Not as much as we would have wanted. Some have and not so well, and others are not able to, and that's when we thought of training some of our students to become builders who learn and keep the experience and then use it for others. Otherwise people, when they build themselves, especially using these technologies, they learn by the time their building is done and all the mistakes are made. So we want those mistakes to be learning possibilities by creating these entrepreneur builders. So with that, it's opening huge gates in Ladakh. We were wondering why it's not picking up, and then we saw that people don't feel confident, especially when it is about your own house. So by having somebody become professional and available, this would happen. But that's more for urban areas where people have some money to spare. For villages, we are working on another model because you can't expect to earn from villages for a professional. So making groups of people help each other with just some technical inputs. In Ladakh, in villages, people build their houses by requesting the whole village to come to the site and work. So they come, the owner arranges tea and meal, and everybody works, brings even wood and things. That's the traditional way which is dying. We would like to revive that for villages, and for urban centers, we would like to introduce entrepreneurs. We are doing that. What was the second one?
Would you transpose this technology into Rajasthan, for instance, where the
yeah,
conditions
yeah,
are
yeah,
inverse of what
exactly.
you are?
Exactly. Not only Rajasthan, but anywhere where climate needs to be adapted, you have different techniques, not the same. This one would work very well in Rajasthan. Sandy soil, you could build with earth, very cold nights, very hot days. Cool of the night can be stored to help you in the day and so on. So with Rajasthan, the same could be used. But even Mumbai and other places, climate responsive architecture is a field not very well explored, but coming up. And that would be the answer for places other than the kind we have.